The movie starts, and we see a woman, Lulu, taking a shower and washing the blood off of her body. We see some furniture in a house, a painting, and a picture. Then we see a man, Tex, drinking milk from the cartoon and putting it back on the fridge. He turns around, and we see another woman, Katie, eating watermelon. She finishes it and turns around to put some clothes into a paper bag. We see them walking on the side of a road and throwing the bag away. They see a car coming and signal him to stop. He asks where they are going, and they get into the car. Lulu says they can buy him breakfast if he takes them with him. We see them having breakfast. Lulu seems to be the only one who's not uncomfortable talking with the driver at first, but then they argue a bit. She says they better get going. 3 years later, Lulu is in prison, humming a song. Katie asks her to sing it again, and she does. She wishes goodnight to Katie and Sadie. Then we see Ms. Carlson talking to Carlene. She asks her for help with the Manson girls. She says they are on death row, and she can't let them rot here. She brings Carlene to the girls to introduce them. She says Carlene is a graduate student, and she comes there to give classes to the inmates. Carlene talks about the classes, and Ms. Carlson leaves them alone. She turns to Susan and asks if her name was Sadie. Sadie says she's gone, and her name is Susan now. Lulu joins in and says her name was Leslie. Katie asks Carlene about the classes, and she tells them about them. Lulu says that's what they were doing with Charlie. They were Earth mothers. Then we get a flashback of Lulu joining them for the first time. The girls take her to Charlie, who's playing guitar and singing. Charlie welcomes and talks to her, but then he says they can't take her. Katie says she likes her, and she can stay. Charlie then continues to talk to Leslie, and he calls Katie. He tells her that she has to show everything to Leslie since she liked her. He then turns to Leslie, tells her to pay attention to what Katie is doing, and says that she is him. Katie starts walking with Leslie and tells her about Charlie. She tells her that Charlie tells them to lose their ego and be like fingers in his hands. They say hi to Tex, and Katie says he does not fully belong there yet. Then she takes her to George, the owner of the farm, and they see a girl, Squeaky, getting intimate with George. They get out, and Katie says they don't get hung up about intimacy in here. Then we see them giving drugs to her, and they go hiking together. We see Charlie talking to them around a bonfire. He starts telling them about the sacrifices he did for them, and he talks about their lives. He tells a girl named Sandy to get naked. She hesitates, and he tells the others to help her. They get her naked, and Charlie turns her around to show her scars, saying he's going to show them how her family abused her. He then says her family felt bad about letting the doctors do this to her, so they spoiled her, but that's not her fault. Charlie asks Sandy to repeat him and says that's her parents' fault. Sandy starts crying as she follows his orders. He then tells the others to say how beautiful she is, and they do. We see Leslie watching this and crying. Then we see Leslie and Katie talking. Leslie tells Carly that Squeaky told her no one belongs to anyone in there except Charlie. They all belong to him, and if she was lucky enough, he'll choose her next. She says every girl should have a daddy like Charlie. Carly nods and gets up. She gives them books to finish until the next week, and they say Charlie said that they were harmful. They were only allowed to read Bible. She asks if they are uncomfortable with it, and says they need to read more books in class. Then she leaves another book, saying that it changed her life, and Katie says it could be interesting. Then we see Carlene talking to her friends from school. She tells them about the girls and asks them to come and talk to them. They refuse to come, saying that there are real victims in that prison and they are the ones who need help. Carlene says maybe they are victims too, but they refuse to help. Katie goes to the backyard and sits down. Then we get a flashback of Katie going to Leslie and waking her up. She tells her that they are going to the dumpsters today, and Charlie told her that Leslie can leave at the end of the day. Leslie says she doesn't want to leave, and Katie wakes up the other girls. They get into a bus, and Charlie comes in, saying he has a new rule. He says none of the girls can carry money with them anymore, and they need to give it to Paul. The girls start singing while Paul drives the bus. Then we see them in the garbage, looking for food to eat. They found some vegetables and return back. We see them having dinner, and Charlie asks what time is it. No one answers, and he says it's now. He collected their calendars and clocks so they can live in the now. He then continues to talk about how they are free, and they are not like the plastic people. Then we see Leslie smoking with the girls. Charlie comes up to her and says it is now time to give her a new name. He calls her Lulu. Then he tells her that they are trying to break their barriers and get free, so they touch themselves and each other. He calls a girl, and she kisses Lulu. She looks around and sees people getting intimate. Then she sees Sandy crying and gets out. Charlie follows her and tells her to not worry about Sandy. He takes her hand and takes her to a room. He starts kissing her. Then he stops, saying she doesn't need to do anything she doesn't want to, but Lulu says she wants it and gets naked. Charlie tells her that if she wants to be free and get rid of all of her bad experiences, she needs to imagine that she's getting intimate with her father. Then they get intimate. Then we return back to the prison. Carlene comes in and tells them that they now have their special cell for classes. She asks them if they have read it, and they start talking about it. Lulu says she's so happy, and the new cell feels like they are back at the house again. Then we have a flashback of them back with Charlie. We see them dressed and running around together with Charlie in the front. Then we see the girls talking about a miracle to Carnell. Katie mentions elves with wings and says she will be one of them. Lulu looks at Carnell and says she thinks that they are crazy. Carnell says no, she's just shocked. She asks them if they know that an elf is a mythical creature, and they can't have wings. Kate gets upset about it and tries to repeat what Charlie told them, but Carnell stops her and asks what they think about it. They talk, and Lulu asks her about her children to change the subject. Carnell starts telling, and Lulu gets a flashback of the time she told her mother that she has a new family now. She tells her mother she's never going to see her again and hangs up the phone. Then we see her talking with the girls and mentioning her past. Katie tells her that they are not allowed to do it in there, and Lulu says Charlie is doing it. Katie gets offended and asks how she dares to question him. Then we see Lulu talking with her mom in prison. She comes back to the cell and Susan leaves. Katie explains it to Carnell, saying no one has come to see her in 3 years. Then we see the girls having fun with Charlie's musician friends. Charlie announces to everyone that his song is on record, and they all get excited. Then we see Charlie talking on the phone. He tells Katie to gather everyone up. He goes out and tells them a man named Terry Metcher is coming there to listen to him, so they need to be prepared. He gives everyone orders, and Lulu asks a question. He gets mad and humiliates her. Terry comes and tells him that he doesn't have much time, and that he wants him to sing right away. Charlie starts singing, and the girls start dancing. He finishes the song, and Terry offers him to walk and talk about his music. The girls ask Charlie about it when he comes back, and he says he gave him money. They didn't sign a contract on the spot, but that's how he works anyway. Later, we see him smashing his guitar to pieces and heading around. Then they sit at the dinner table, and Charlie asks a question about the food. He gets mad at the girl who made it and starts beating her. Then he kisses her and tells her to go back to the kitchen. Lulu goes to check on her, and she says that she's fine. Charlie gave her what she needed. Then we see Carnell gifting the girls books. The girls give her a gift back, and they say it's just like the ones they gave to Charlie. Then we see them meeting with a group of people who have motors. Charlie says Tex fought with a black man, and they need this group of people for the black man's attack. They hang out with them, and we see Tex hitchhiking. He gets into a car and gets away from them. We see Charlie talking to them, telling them about the miracle in the Bible, saying they are the ones being talked about in it. He says that the black man that fought with Tex is going to attack them and start a race war. We see Carnell coming to the prison with a black man, Bill. She makes him talk with the girls, and he says Charlie's thoughts are racist. Lulu remembers Charlie's words about the Helter Skelter when she tries to sleep at night. She starts crying, and Katie asks her what's wrong. She asks if they have ever thought that the Helter Skelter was never going to happen and that Charlie was wrong. Katie says no and tells her to not give up. Then we see Charlie giving the girls knives and preparing them for the war. They tell this to Carnell, and she starts asking them questions. She asks if they still believe in Charlie's words. They don't answer at first, but then Lulu says she started to doubt last night. Ms. Carlson comes in then and says that the decision has come down, and the girls have to stay there. They get so sad and start crying. Then we see Lulu and Katie talking in the backyard. Katie admits that it's her fault that Lulu is in prison, and asks if she hates her. Lulu says she can never hate her, and they hug. Then we see Katie cutting her hair. Carnell comes in with a guitarist the next morning. When she starts talking to them, she turns to them and sees that all of them are bald. She asks why they did that, and the girls say that Charlie wanted them to do it last night. Then we see Carnell talking to friends from school. She says that she just wants to remind them who they were before they met with Charlie. Then we see Lulu back on the farm, talking with a motorcyclist. They get intimate, and Charlie comes in. He tells him to leave and never come back without an invitation. He takes Lulu, Katie, and a girl named Linda out to rob a house. He tells them what to do, and the girls look around the house while he waits in the car. He asks them what they got and tells them to do better next time. Then the man Lulu slept with comes again the next day, and asks her to come with him. He thinks she isn't there of her own free will, and Charlie comes out. Lulu turns and looks at him. When Charlie tells her to go, Lulu turns around and says no. The man asks if she's sure and tells her that he doesn't want anything in return from her, but she says no again. The man turns back and leaves. Charlie makes Lulu get in the car and takes her to a cliff. He tells her to jump if she's thinking of leaving him. We see Charlie checking the guns when Tex comes back. He says that he saw the plastic people, and he understood that he needs to be there. Charlie welcomes him and gives him a gun. He tries shooting and sees there is no bullet inside. Charlie asks him if he's ready to die for him, and Tex says yes. He makes him sit down on a chair. He starts yelling at him with the girls, and Tex yells back at them. This goes on for a while. Then we see Tex burning his ID cards, saying he belongs to Charlie now. Then we see Charlie calling Terry, but he doesn't pick up. He gets mad and goes to his house. Sharon opens the door and tells him that Terry moved to Malibu. She invites him in, but Charlie refuses and goes away. We see Jimmy, the prison guard, bringing a TV with Sharon's news playing. Then we see Charlie going to Tex. He tells him to go to Terry's house and make it look like one of the black people did it. We see Tex covered in blood with Katie. They look at the woman, who's begging them to spare her and her baby. Katie tells Tex to do it, and he takes her life. Sadie keeps watching the TV, and Katie yells at her to turn it off. Then we see them sitting together with Carnell and speaking about a book. Then they start asking questions about each other's life. Then we see Katie talking to Lulu after the murder. She says it didn't feel right, but it was the right thing to do. Charlie comes in while they were continuing to talk and takes Katie. He tells her the last night was messy, and they need to do it right tonight. Lulu says she wants to come too, and Charlie takes her with them. We see him coming out of a house. He tells the girls what they need to do and says they need to find their own way back. He gets in the car and leaves. The girls get into the house and see Tex choking a man. He tells them to take care of the woman and takes the knife. Katie attacks the woman, but Lulu gets scared and walks back. Then something catches her eye, and she goes to look at it. We see the painting, furniture, and picture we saw at the beginning of the movie. She starts looking at them like she is in a trance. Tex is covered in blood, and Katie yells for him. Lulu collects herself and gets back in the room. She sees Tex on top of the woman's deceased body. He gives her the knife, and she starts stabbing the woman over and over again while screaming. Then we see them back in prison, and Lulu says it was all for nothing. She says they did horrible things for nothing. Katie says they did what they had to do, and Lulu stops her, saying, "Call me Leslie." Leslie says they didn't have to do all of these things, but they did it. She asks them why, but none of them answer. She then gets up and goes to her cell. Katie and Carnell start crying. We see Carnell walking out of the prison, and we see what happened to them for the rest of their life. Then we see Leslie reliving her past and choosing to go with the man with the motorcycle at the end of the movie.